Hello, and thank you for joining our presentation on the validation study of the current selection system and updated recommendations for Just Another Police Department, also known as JAPD. This presentation was prepared by Guided Results and Talent Analytics. This is an industrial organizational consulting firm comprised of 4 members: Gabby Arquette-Overman, Raymond Booth, Thomas Freeman, and Amber Frolick. We hope you enjoy our presentation. Just Another Police Department asked our team to evaluate its selection system for validity, fairness, and legal defensibility. Our analysis showed that general mental ability is the strongest predictor of job performance, with the in-basket test adding meaningful predictive power. Interviews and job knowledge tests provided limited additional value. However, fairness analyses revealed potential adverse impact against Black applicants at lower selection ratios, though predictive validity was consistent across groups. Based on this, we recommend a 3-predictor system: GMA, structured interviews, and the in-basket test. This approach balances accuracy with fairness while covering both cognitive and interpersonal competencies. We also suggest score branding, situational judgment tests, expanded outreach, and structured rater training to further improve equity and reliability. Overall, this system gives JAPD a validated, utility-driven, and legally defensible process that supports both performance and community trust. Our team was hired by JAPD's Chief People Officer to validate the department's selection system. The purpose of this study is to evaluate whether the current methods, such as interviews, cognitive tests, and in-basket tests, effectively predict job performance while remaining fair and legally defensible. Using principles from IO psychology, we examined 3 areas: validity, utility, and fairness. Validity shows how well predictors forecast performance, utility demonstrates the practical value of better selection decisions, and fairness ensures compliance with equal employment laws. By combining these analyses, JAPD will gain a clear understanding of how its selection system supports effective hiring, reduces turnover, and promotes equitable practices. Our recommendations will help ensure the department hires officers who reflect its values and meet role expectations.
Moving on to the organization and job context, our client JAPD is a large metropolitan police department with the mission to protect public safety and uphold the law. But recently, they have faced pressure to strengthen its hiring process to make sure it's effective and fair and legally defensible. And the role we're focusing on is police officers, which are responsible for any calls of service, enforcing the law, and investigating incidents. And beyond the technical duties of this role, they also need soft skills, de-escalation techniques, and intervention strategies to maintain public trust. This role requires both cognitive abilities and interpersonal skills, which makes it a high-stakes role with complex demands. And the selection system for this needs to ensure validity, fairness, and utility so that JAPD can make hires who reflect the department's values and meet expectations of the role. Moving on to selection methods, JAPD uses 4 main tools: a structured interview, general mental ability test, job knowledge test, and an in-basket exercise. Structured interview helps evaluate professionalism, communication, and other interpersonal skills, whilst the GMA test measures reasoning and learning capacity, which, backed by research, is one of the strongest predictors of job performance. The knowledge test assesses the understanding of the role, while the in-basket exercise simulates relevant scenarios to capture decision-making under pressure. Together, these methods give JAPD a mix of cognitive, technical, and interpersonal insights about candidates, but later on we will see that some of these tools are more useful and have more predictive power than others. This leads us to our KSAO method matrix, which will be visible in the report, but just shows how the selection tools relate to needed KSAOs for the job. Examples: the GMA covers critical thinking, a structured interview covers many communication skills, in-basket focuses on decision makings, while the job knowledge measures procedure and legal understandings of the job. Laying out this matrix shows us where selection methods align with the job demands for a police officer at JAPD and where gaps might exist. This makes it clear which predictors are essential, keep, and which add just little to no value. and it shows how the overall system could be changed for fairness and efficiency.
Criterion-related validity determines the relationship between predictors and work-related outcomes. In this study, we analyzed the relationship between the interviews, general mental ability, job knowledge, and in-basket tests with job performance within the JAPD. General mental ability was the strongest single predictor with a correlation of 0.489 with job performance. The in-basket test showed a moderate relationship at 0.333, while interviews and job knowledge had weaker correlations at 0.208 and 0.192. When we combined all four predictors into a composite score, the overall validity increased slightly to 0.512. This means that there are modest gains from using multiple predictors, but the majority of the predictive power comes from general mental ability. Overall, this evidence suggests that general mental ability is the most effective single tool, but combining multiple assessments provides a more balanced evaluation of candidates. Alternative predictor models allow us to see how different combinations of assessments work together to predict job performance. This helps us weigh the benefits and limitations of relying on a single predictor versus combining multiple measures. When we paired general mental ability with other predictors, we found only minimal improvements. For example, combining general mental ability with the in-basket test produced an R-squared of 0.252, while combining it with interviews resulted in an R-square of 0.251. These results show that adding a second predictor offers only small gains beyond general mental ability alone, and adding additional methods leads to diminishing returns. In other words, while multiple predictors can give a more well-rounded view of candidates, most of the predictive strength still comes from general mental ability. This reinforces the value of examining predictors both individually and in combination to understand their overall contribution. Utility analysis looks at the real-world value a hiring system brings to an organization. In other words, it helps us understand whether the selection process improves the quality of hires enough to justify the time, money, and effort invested. For JAPD, the composite validity of three predictors, general mental ability, interviews, and the in-basket test, is about 0.51, meaning this combination explains roughly 26% of the variance in job performance. That makes it a meaningful predictor of officer success. Using the Taylor-Russell model, we see that stronger validity leads to a higher proportion of successful hires. These gains are the most noticeable when base rates are moderate and selection ratios are lower. In practical terms, this means even small improvements in prediction can translate into significant real-world benefits, better job performance, reduced turnover, and stronger organizational outcomes. Research consistently shows that evidence-based selection systems deliver a strong return on investment for organizations like JAPD. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Thomas.
A critical component of evaluating JAPD's selection system was assessing fairness, bias, and compliance with relevant employment laws. We took a look at the selection ratios of 10, 50, and 90%. 10% meaning JAPD is very selective when hiring, and 90% meaning JAPD hires almost everyone. We found that with the four assessment composite failed the 4/5 rule at 10% and 50% selection ratios, indicating adverse impact against Black applicants. But at 90%, it passed the 4/5 rule. This means that when we are highly or moderately selective, we run the risk of adverse impact. But if we hire almost everyone, we reduce adverse impact. We also saw the same pattern when we reduced the assessments to a GMA test plus an additional assessment. They all failed at 10 and 50%, but passed at 90%. The big takeaway here is clear. When we are highly or moderately selective, we need additional safeguards to manage adverse impact risk. So what do we suggest JAPD should do? Our recommendation is simple. It's to continue to use the three assessment methods, the general mental ability test, a structured interview, and an in-basket exercise. This balances predictive power with job relevance. The GMA remains the strongest single predictor. The interview captures interpersonal and ethical judgment, and the in-basket test provides evidence of prioritization and decision-making under pressure. Together, they deliver a highly predictive measure for future job performance. There is a deficiency of adverse impact that needs to be addressed. To address this, JAPD should apply banding to all its assessments and expand outreach to diversify the applicant pool. JAPD may also want to consider supplemental assessments with smaller subgroup differences. Run revalidation with these new assessments to determine if they should replace current assessments or be added to the current assessment methods. Moving forward, we also recommend structured rater training and revalidation every 3 to 5 years. By following this balanced approach, JAPD can maintain a selection system that is predictive, fair, and legally defensible while also building equity and trust.